last minute addition, as if that's just an easy thing to do. You're gonna have to close that door for me, please.
All right, well, Molweni, Dumelang, good day, everybody. And yeah, welcome to the last one of our HERI winter seminar series. So this is going to be an hour on the first Tuesday of every month. And it was the webinar space is crowded and people are pretty zoomed out. So Laura Rawdon, who runs HERI with me, and I were very deliberate about what we were going to do. And we really wanted to stand out a little bit in a crowded, over-zoomed space, right? So we've really scratched our heads with putting this series together. And the event for today is definitely a case of saving the best for last. And we have been super excited about this for months and months and months. And it was actually the original idea, what we wanted to do the whole time with the seminar series. And so it's really incredible that it has actually all come together, and here we are on Zoom today. And she's turned her video off and gets a bit embarrassed when I do this, but I really have to have like a huge thank you to Laura for actually making today happen. What started off as like the two of us having like a wild idea in literally February, and here we are. So welcome everybody. Thank you for showing up. I suppose before I introduce our incredible speakers, thank you to you as well. It's really an honor to have you on the Zoom with us today. Everybody is busy and this is the hectic time of year for everybody. So thank you. And yeah, what we're going to do today is we've got these two incredible authors, two female authors. And so we have Dr. Thato Motlhalamme and Dr. Rebecca Wraggs Sykes, and they both are scientists and real leaders who have written general books for a general authorship, right? So not specific science books. And Laura and I are total fangirls of both these authors and are fascinated at the intersection of kind of like popular books for a general audience and academia, and how the kind of revolving doors of academia and the book journeys and publishing stories that these two authors actually have, a little bit of the behind the scenes story, because they're both remarkable books. So Thato's book, which she co-authored, is a book chronicling the journeys of 14 award-winning and pioneering Black women in science in South Africa. The book is called Holding the Knife's Edge, Journeys of Black Female Scientists. It's a cracking read, incredible. And Rebecca's book is called KINDRED, Neanderthal Life, Love, Death, and Art. And it is the most incredible kind of window and deconstruction into decades, like even 100 years of research into Neanderthals. And my like Christmas holiday treat to myself was the audiobook, which Rebecca reads herself. And I just walked around my house listening to the audiobook for hours, like losing my mind in my summer holidays, just like, this is unbelievably cool. This is amazing. So it is a great honor to have both these women on the call today. And the way we're going to do this is that Thato is going to speak first and talk about her book, and she's got some lovely slides, and it's just going to give you a little bit of the kind of backstory to the book. Then we will hand over to Rebecca, who will do pretty much the same and also speak briefly about her book. Do you have some slides, Becky? Yeah, okay. We will sort out the screen sharing, it will be fine. And then please hold your questions, put your questions in the chat. And then, so the last kind of 20 minutes, 30 minutes even, is going to be a conversation, which I will moderate, but we're going to have these two authors in conversation talking about the kind of publishing process and their books and responding to any questions that you guys have. I have a lot of questions, but it's really your space to ask some questions. So really like hold your questions. And yeah, we need to wrap this up by 1 o'clock. Like no one really needs to be on Zoom for longer than an hour. And Laura and I's childcare situations, my au pair and Laura's nanny are both ill. So we both have to rush off and do the school run as well. So we'll need to wrap up by 1 o'clock. I think that's enough from me. I'm going to shut up and hand over to Thato.
Hi, Robin. Thank you so much for the invite. Thank you both to you and Laura for organizing such a wonderful webinar series and inviting Evodia and I just want to do a quick check-in. Can you see my slides?
Yes, we can see your slides. If you want to go to the like slideshow view. Yeah.
It's on slideshow view. Okay. Right. So when Laura and Robin and I chatted last week, or was it 2 weeks ago, about how I should prepare for this webinar series, they were like, okay, fine, maybe give us a bit of a background on your journey, you and Evodia's writing journey, and how you got this book together. So this allowed me to kind of go back in time and remember everything that brought us to this point. And we always have differing genesis stories about how a book came together. But the one common factor is because Evodia and I work in the same environment. She is a professor. And when I joined the institute that we both work in right now, I joined as a PhD student. And the one thing that stood out for me during my studies was that there was a lack of representation for me at that time of women who looked like me, who were excelling in science, and whose career paths I could follow and try and emulate in molding myself as a scientist. And those conversations generally happened over coffee. Evodia and I are big fans of coffee. So our coffee dates or our coffee time would revolve, some of it would revolve around discussing what challenges she's experienced as a female in science, how she's navigated those challenges, and to carve a successful path for herself. So when I kept pestering her about this, she was like, okay, fine. If you really think that there's a genuine problem, why don't you put a list of women together that you would have loved to interview or sit down and talk to about their careers in science and how they molded their careers. And if really the pickings are slim, then maybe we should, instead of just interviewing one or having a chat with one or two people, rather put together their stories in a book format. That sounded very daunting for me at the time, but what the other thing we thought was that, okay, fine, if we're going to put together questions for these women, let's get more than one voice on what challenges younger females in science are facing that they would want to pose to their older counterparts and how they should handle these challenges. So the first thing that we did, the most fun thing that we did amongst a lot of things, was host what we call the soiree. So the picture that you're seeing here is the chat that we had with 3 other young females in science. We were all doing PhDs, and there was one postdoc. So we were all relatively new and early in our careers, and we had a chat about the challenges or what we faced as young females in science, and what Evodia, who has many years of experience on us, has faced, and what are the commonalities and things like that. So from this evening, we drew a set of questions that we refined and put together in a questionnaire format to pose to the ladies that we would eventually even interview and ask about how they navigated some of the hurdles that they inevitably faced during their career paths. So first big job that we had was to find these females. And we don't only just want females in academia, we wanted female scientists who had gone the academic path, but also chosen to go into business. Some would be authors, some go into NGO space. So we wanted women who were in diverse fields, because we didn't want the narrow view that a science or a science career equals academic research. There were many doors that can be opened up for you. So we wanted to highlight that, and also show that if you have a PhD in biological sciences, it does not mean that you have to stay in a biological research center. You can do X, Y, and Z with it. The sky's the limit, basically. And for some women who, like me now, but then had become authors, and not for non-fiction or fiction authors, how did they manage to juggle these 2 lives? So we wanted to really showcase that. So we found many people, put together a list of females, emailed them the questionnaires, waited, and it's one of the most frustrating things. Sometimes you sometimes get an immediate bounce back with an email address that's probably years old, so doesn't work anymore, or you get no response and you keep pestering, because I was like, I'm persistent. Some of these people, their stories, I think, are invaluable, so they need to be told, and you keep getting no feedback. So it was a constant cycle. When we got positive feedback or negative feedback, no, my schedule is too busy, I can't make time for it, or no feedback, we'd go back to the list drawing board, try and see how many more women we can draw in. So this was the constant cycle we had until we had to settle on a number of 14. So 14 was not the target number. We would have done more, we could have done less, but 14 was the number that we had when we decided to call time on the searching for females to interview, and now get to the hard work of actually sitting down, interviewing them, transcribing the interviews, and then synthesizing stories from those interviews. While this was happening in parallel, to publish a book is no cheap and easy feat. So you need a bit of funding. To, especially the kind of book that we wanted to put together. We didn't want a hard fact book that was tedious to read. We wanted it to be easy for a high schooler, for a casual reader, for parents, for children alike, and we wanted it illustrated so that it doesn't showcase us as just a boring bunch of women, but we have so much about our life, our personalities. So to get an illustrator on board, to get the right partnerships, and for us, we were very we were very blessed in that we got to work with an awesome publishing company, QuickFox, and they saw our vision, understood our vision, and worked with us and walked the path with us to making our vision a reality. But once we had the budget sorted, because then when you know what you want, you approach your service providers, they tell you, well, to get your dream to reality, this is how much it's going to cost. We're like, okay, fine. Most of it we're probably not going to be able to self-fund for a while. So we set up a Thunder Fund account, and that's where friends, families, and anyone and everyone in between jumped behind our dream and really contributed immensely. They contributed immensely to getting the first stages of this book completed, the illustrations done, the proofreading, and all the editing that needed to be done was done from the people who supported our dream via Thunder Fund. The rest of the way we had to walk and pay for ourselves. But that was a labor of love that I think has just kept on paying back. So again, fundraising is happening in the background. We're busy writing the stories, but I jumped one slide ahead. Anyway, fundraising is happening in the background. We're busy writing the story, but we are not full-time authors. Evodia, like I said, is a professor, so she still has her full academic load. At the time we were writing the story, she was also traveling extensively overseas. I was finishing my PhD, so lab work, writing up my thesis, taking up a lot of time. We laugh, we joke, but we really have not had a free Saturday in quite a number of years since we started on this journey of putting the book together. Most of our Saturdays have been dedicated to writing, rewriting, editing, researching. We've honed skills that we never thought we would need. Our journalistic skills have come into, have been honed. Our sleuthing skills, because to find people and get them to respond and get them to really see and buy into your dream, you have to be quite a bit of an internet sleuth. But all of that had to happen in our spare time because we still had full-time or day-to-day work that we had to do. And in the year that we were supposed to put this book together and celebrate it now with the launch, lo and behold, COVID hits. So we couldn't do anything. Restrictions are now in place, so we don't even have the option to work together in the same space. Technology, like how it's helping now, we were able to work online and still edit and put together, launch the book virtually, which was not the dream, but it was nonetheless an awesome event. So hard work paid off in the end. The culmination of almost 2 years of work resulted in a book launch in 2020, in September 2020. So the video I'm about to play for you guys, it's a short clip, just shows you the excitement, the joy, I don't know, all the emotions that could be wrapped up into two people when they're working on a project that they're really, really passionate and enthusiastic about. Can you hear it? Can you hear the sound? Okay.
Actually, no, Thato, the sound isn't coming through. I was too quick there.
Okay. I'm gonna try that again. Is it coming through now, Robin? Nothing.
I don't
Okay.
think so.
It's fine. I will narrate it through. I'll narrate it through. So what you guys are seeing now is the very first 2 copies, hard copies of the book. the very, very, very first 2 copies of the book that we hear. I mean, when you're working on a digital thing, you really don't get that feeling. So we got to see the book and see how the book was dedicated to the pioneering women in science. And that was all the women who walked the journey before us and all the women who inspired us to write this journey, who are coming behind us to say, if you're ever in doubt about your skills and your abilities in maths and science, or whatever it is that you think might not pay off in the long run, look at how awesome, look at the women you stand on, the giants. So these are pictures of, or the illustrations of some of the women in the book. We've got, for you guys in UCT, we've got Professor Mamkheti Pakeng, we've got researchers at the CSIR, we've got researchers at Rhodes University. So this video literally it was the excitement of holding literally the pages of the book that you've worked on for so long. So yes, the very first 2 copies and everything that all the excitement around it. And then the launch day finally came. We were not authors before then, so it was another learning experience. How do you put together a book launch? What needs to go into it? Who do you invite? Which platforms do you need to explore that would offer you the least glitches, but allow you to have as many participants as you possibly can have, how to make it interactive, because our dream was to have the book launch at a book stall. But how can you get that feeling in a webinar space and have a lot of these women who were profiled in the book come in and have people ask them questions. Maybe there were some things that we didn't quite clarify in the book that you thought, if I have the opportunity, let me do it at the book launch. So that was the dream that we had for our initial book launch, but we managed to pull it off quite well in the virtual space. The picture in the middle is Anne Chisa, who had graciously agreed to host the book launch for us. So that was just the book launch. And then from there, we didn't quite realize how many people would want signed copies. So we've got quite a number of these photos where either Evodia or myself are signing copies to send out to people who had bought but were like, can we please get a signed copy? But it was a beautiful labor of love that we have enjoyed to bring to reality. That's it on the genesis of our writing story.
Wow, Thato, I mean, I'm almost speechless. It's so amazing. Thank you for telling us that story. And we know Anne with an E. Anne with an
Yes.
E's interviewed Rivenengo Khoza, one of our PhD students. She is just wonderful. So Anne with an E runs an incredible podcast. It's called the Root of the Science podcast. And she gets African researchers to tell the story of how they got into science. And yeah, it's an amazing podcast. Everyone should get it in their ears immediately. And Anne is just a hostess with the mostess. Like, she's amazing. PhD student at UKNZ, isn't she?
UKNZ, yeah.
Yeah, she's wonderful. So thank you, Thato. Like, I have a lot of questions, but I'm just I've been like writing them down. I'm just going to hold the space, and I'm going to hand over screen sharing, like the online version of Will the Projector Speak to My Laptop? Here she is. I don't know if Laura told you this, Becky, but one of our HERI webinars, the one on mental health, we had the most amazing speaker, and we got hacked by Russian hackers who took over his screen and wrote racist slurs on his slides. Yeah.
Oh dear. Well, let's hope none of that happens today.
It's really extreme. So, all right, I'm gonna shut up and hand over to Rebecca.
Okay. Yeah, my talk's just going to be a little whiz through of why am I here today talking to everybody? Well, I think essentially because two reasons. One, I wrote a book about Neanderthals, and number two, I'm on Twitter, so that's why Robin knows who I am. And yes, the importance of social media and stuff is not to be underestimated, actually, in terms of thinking about different experiences in authoring and how the process actually happens. But we can talk about that in questions. But yeah, so I kind of just want to make a point early on, since this event is kind of aimed at thinking about career pathways and stuff, which is that I think a lot of people, despite knowing the reality of the academic landscape, I think a lot of people still have this idea that there is like a very clear, straight pathway to careers. And I think, you know, as most people progress in their careers, they understand that the reality is more like the picture on the left, you know, this very messy, very braiding river where sometimes you have little bits that just fizzle out, and that's okay. And then you can go back and do other stuff. And that's actually much more certainly my experience. So this has kind of helped me, this idea has helped me, I guess, yeah, feel that where I've been and where I am right now is actually not sort of off the pathway. It is the pathway, if that makes sense. So yeah, this is kind of like another visualization of that. On the left, this is my academic route. So, you know, BA at Bristol, then I master's, PhD, and then I had an honorary position at Manchester for a bit. Then I had a postdoc at Bordeaux, and now I'm an honorary fellow at Liverpool. So this is the straight looking pathway, but if you go through the river, then all this other stuff has been going on as well, which is different, I guess, activities and ways of expressing what is ultimately my interest in archaeology and in the past. And it's taken me a long time to, I guess, realize that all of that is not stuff around the side. That's actually what I do. And sometimes it's been through academic channels and other times it hasn't, and that this is actually just, this is my career. So the diversity of it actually has been an incredibly lucky experience for me, and yeah, I feel incredibly fortunate to be able to be at a point now where I can sort of take the things that I'm passionate about and pursue them outside sort of the strictures of what academia offers in terms of funded pathways and careers, which is pretty limited. So yeah, just to go back deeper into the origins of things, I have totally been one of those people that's into archaeology since I was a kid. So this is a drawing I did, I don't know, maybe I was like 9 or 10, picking up rabbit skulls, an old rabbit skull and then a new rabbit skull. You see, there's some taphonomy in action. Kids understand it. Yeah, and so that's just me on the first excavation I went on when I was 6. That's the second one, when I was 16. I was very lucky that my parents were picked up that I was like really interested in the past. And in the UK, we have work experience when you are about 14 at school. You have to choose like where to spend 2 weeks. It couldn't be any job. I spent 1 week at an advertising agency in the middle of London. I can't even remember how that was arranged. And the other week was spent on an excavation, a Roman excavation. And yeah, the joy of digging and everything, and it really bit. So that's definitely sort of the origin. But yeah, so to come to the kind of core of the talk and what I do at the moment and where I've got to is that I published a book just before Thato's book, actually, August 2020. So I had kind of a sort of a similarly, you know, weird experience of publishing during pandemic. How odd all that is. I finished it in like, oh, I don't know, maybe that was April, May, around the beginning 2020, and then yeah, it came out quite fast, partly because I was very late in submitting it and the publishers just had to cope with that. But yeah, so I mean, we can talk in the questions, because I'm, you know, aware with the time that we've got left about how the process actually worked in terms of contract and stuff. I'm happy to answer questions about that. But where I am now with it is just like completely mind blown at the response I've had from this book. I've got some of the translation covers up there just because they're so cool. Yeah, I think it's like, I don't know, 19 languages or something now. But I think this is because, you know, why did I write Kindred? Let's start there. There's that book, which I'm sure everybody's heard of, which, you know, whatever one thinks about that book, it clearly has tapped into a very strong interest in discussion and narrative about origins and humanity. There are other books about Neanderthals. Neanderthals are such a popular topic. You know, it's not like there hasn't been a book about Neanderthals. There have been, even relatively recently. But I was hoping to write something a bit different. And part of that is what I wanted to do was to write a book that was like definitive in terms of talking about the story of the Neanderthals, about basically like, what can we say about Neanderthals? What's all the stuff we can say about Neanderthals? What do we know? What do we not know? What do we think we might know? All of that. So it's kind of, we're supposed to be really comprehensive. And one of the key aspects there, of course, is the advances in archaeology. So this is a 1908 excavation. Let's hope nobody digs like that these days. You know, that's that's not good. This is at Le Mécoq in France. Whereas today, this is how we excavate sites. You know, it's very, you know, I don't need to say this to all you guys, you know, but I wanted to kind of really explain what 21st century Paleolithic archaeology actually means in terms of how we do stuff and what it can tell us and why we go to these insane lengths of data collection, because actually what we can say is incredible. So all different kinds of things, you know, micro layers in hearths, all of this stuff. So this is what I really wanted to put in as like the meat in the book. Also, of course, the whole context of evolution massively changed even in the past sort of 30-40 years, where Neanderthals fit. Just in the past million years, so many more hominids got so much more interesting and busy. Also, how we think about Neanderthals has really changed. And I really wanted to bring out the facts that we know as Pleistocene researchers, that, you know, Neanderthals are not just Arctic-y kind of hominins, and they're not even actually really Arctic hominins. They're more like, you know, just cool species. But they're also you know, found in forests. They are people of the woodland and all of this. So I wanted to have this real sort of deep narrative and help also get rid of all these crazy sort of ideas about Neanderthals as very, I guess not even primitive, just that they were basically waiting to become extinct and, you know, were just depressed at even being alive. And, you know, you can see, although these here are all very old reconstructions, and if you look at modern reconstructions like these, you can see that how we envision Neanderthals really has changed. And so the archaeology has gone into reconstruction art for sure. You know, Neanderthals looking at us now, and it's amazing, they return the gaze. But I think that has not really filtered out totally into how the public perceive things. So I wanted to show people how we have got to this point where the Neanderthals we envision are like this now, and how did we get there with the archaeology? So that's what I wanted to do, and I really wanted to help people place Neanderthals and themselves back in that Pleistocene world, you know, really giving people that context. So to do that, history and archaeology, all of that, but also I wanted this book to sort of allow me to just do the thing which I love, which is also telling stories and writing. And it took me a while to, I guess, get over my fear of doing that, because coming from academia, that's not what we're trained to do. It's very difficult to sort of put that kind of writing into academic papers. Some people manage it. They tend to already be quite senior in their careers when they start to be able to get away with quite whimsical papers and stuff like this. And I certainly was not allowed to do that as a young researcher. So this book was me just like going, this is the kind of writing I want to do. All of these books, both academic and not, were influential in the kind of thinking and inspiration and writing, and I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that we're inspired by novels in how we write. That's cool. So, and yeah, these are the things really that I've wanted and I hoped and I dreamed that this book might be able to do, which is to connect people. Connection was really one of the key things I was trying to do. And that's to connect people to the archaeology, to how we do the archaeology, to the archaeologists, but also to why we do archaeology, and that incredible privilege that we have of actually being in physical proximity, in touch literally with those material remains. And this idea that, you know, all around us as we dig, the past is there, it's thick, it is literally there, it's just the fourth dimension, you know. And I wanted to just write a book that helped people understand these ideas, as well as helping people engage and connect with the ideas that this is not just like an abstract past. Human evolution and Neanderthals and other hominins, they are literally part of us right now. They're in our bodies, and they connect us to the past and to our future. So those aspects were really what I hoped to put into the book, and personal ideas and things that I think a lot of archaeologists, most archaeologists, if not all, do actually feel, but that we don't necessarily tell each other that we feel that, because it doesn't sound very professional. But, you know, I don't have an academic job now, so I can say it. So that was what I was hoping for the book. And yeah, I mean, it's been fantastic, the response I've had from people, not just, you know, I've had many emails from the public, and I know that certainly for a lot of readers I did actually achieve that, and that is such a wonderful feeling. Literally, like just yesterday I got an email from somebody who sent me a poem that he's written inspired by this book, and just like all this kind of stuff, you know, it's that connection, and I really am pleased about that. But also the response I've had from colleagues, people assigning this in their teaching, you know, I can't say what an honor that is, that people would find something of use in this book and feel that they want to communicate it to their students. So yeah, thank you very much for having me, and I'm looking forward to talking. That's it.
Well, thank you, Becky. Thank you so much. What a treat to have a bit of a behind the scenes kind of window into the process. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. It's really fascinating. And yeah, you kept saying things, all the questions and my responses, then you kept saying. But yeah, I mean, I haven't read your book, I've listened to your book, and what I liked the most, I'll tell you what I liked the most about it, was how you didn't center the scientists as individuals, because a lot of old white men, you didn't mention any names. You said the scientists, the archaeologists, and explained what they'd actually found rather than centering the individuals. And I just loved that. I was like, this is just such a relief. I mean, I have a degree in archaeology from 15 years ago, right? In African archaeology. I don't actually know much about Neanderthals. I don't actually want to know who did what. I want to know what they found. And as a scientist, that was so rewarding for me. But then what I actually loved the most was the beautiful narrative text that you start each chapter with. So you have to understand, I'm walking around my house listening to your audiobooks, and I was completely transported. You know, I was in a cave, I was in a forest, like the writing is so beautiful. Like it was just amazing. So give me a little fangirl moment here. So thank you. I have a lot of questions for you both, and we have 19 minutes. Please, lovely audience members, if you have any questions, you're welcome to jump in. You can unmute yourself. You can jump in and ask our guests any questions, or even better, you can put them in the chat. But my question for both of you, to start off with, I have many, but the illustrations of both books are arrestingly beautiful, and you both spoke about illustrating and, you know, how we see the subject matter in the book, which are different but similar, right? So if I can go back to you to start off with, Thato, can you talk us through just very briefly the illustration process? Because I'm really fascinated, because the pictures are so beautiful. Even the cover art and the art used in your slides is just so lovely. And if you can just tell us a little bit about that process.
Well, for the illustrations in the book, we worked with Warwick Goldswain, and it was a back and forth, because we were clear that we didn't want the standard illustration of a typical scientist, lab coats, or any lab environment. We wanted the careers and the journeys of these women to be reflected in our illustrations, but in such a way that it engages everyone from across the board. We wanted a young kid to be excited. How come there's a toothpaste and a plant and this flying around behind her, but she's got these quirky little glasses? What is Nox Makunga all about? So we wanted that to come out. Or with Proper King, where you've got the academic leader, but we've also got the fashionista. You've got that very different layers of this woman, and that engages you. So that makes you wanted illustrations that made you want to find out, what is this all about? So that was really the story behind it. So it was a back and forth and just trying to get the essence of who these women were, not just the science that they do, but who they were and how we perceive them to be when we interacted with them.
And you certainly nail, I mean, what a brief to give an illustrator. What did he have to work with? Did he meet the women? What did he have to work with? I'm just super curious.
He had to work with the stories that we gave him and what he could find online. So it was always
it's hard.
Yeah, it was quite hard. We have to give him.
I mean, these are busy ladies. Like they literally don't have time to sit and meet an illustrator.
Exactly. No. We completely freed up that time. They didn't have to interact with Warwick at all. He went from what we wrote in the story, and he'd give us drafts of the illustrations. And if we think something needed to be tweaked, you didn't quite get the instance right, we gave him feedback, and he did a brilliant job.
Yes, really, because as I said, the artwork is so eye-catching and engaging, and it just pulls you in.
Yeah.
Obviously, big UCT bias, but we are big HERI King fans, and she's a beautiful woman who's incredibly accomplished.
Yeah.
And to capture those layers, it's not easy, actually.
It's not easy at all, and that's what we wanted to show. We didn't want just the one-dimensional layer of any of these women, and that was us trying to show the fun side of all of us as people.
Yes.
We're not just we're not just one-dimensional.
No. My sense, even with the color palette, it's just so joyful. It's just such a celebration, which is the whole point of the book, right?
Yeah.
So, Becky, if I can turn to you with a similar question, and I know you've worked with the illustrators of Tom Borkland, something.
I know I didn't work with him.
Didn't work with him, all right.
No, the person that did, I'll just get it down, because I have a colour section, which does have some of his stuff in, but the person who did the illustrations, I just showed you some in the talk, the actual drawn illustrations, is an archaeologist, Alison Atkin. And I wanted to work with her because I've seen her work. She does sort of quite clean, but almost kind of like sketchy. And we wanted to go for like almost like an engraving kind of vibe to it. But what the process was basically that I gave her sketches and said, I want to make something like this appear. So like these are like two of my sketches that I gave her. So this is from the epilogue, and this is from one of the last chapters. And so she then produced out of that this beautiful thing. So this is from the penultimate chapter, and then let me just get the epilogue one up so you can see how much better and beautiful her actual renderings of my mad ideas turned out to be. And yeah, I wanted to have a mix of illustrations because they connect to those little narrative sections at the beginning of each chapter, some of which are set in Neanderthal sort of time, some of which aren't. They're set in other periods, or they talk about other things. And I wanted to sort of, give people a little flavour, some of which would be a bit unexpected. Like there's one illustration which came about because when I read scientific papers, I often get like very clear visual sort of images of what was going on in the past, and I wanted to sort of express that through the narrative stuff that I wrote, but also through the art. But some of my ideas were just totally weird. Like there's a hunting site, Schöningen, and it's a horse hunting site by a lake. It's like about 330,000 years old, loads of spears, amazing place. And whenever I've read, I mean, there's been a huge amount of recent work done on that, loads of recent papers, and just the visualizing of that site's very hard not to imagine, like, just horse madness and just the violence of it and everything going on. But also there was just this thing that came into my head, like what did it look like after they'd gone, like after the butchering was finished and the horses are still floating in the lake and stuff. And so I said to Alison, I want to do a picture that's like of a horse's eye floating, looking up at the sky. She was like, what? That's mad. But she managed to do it, and this was her version of it, and it did actually it turned out really good compared to sort of the weird thing that I'd said to her. So
I think I've sat here because I listened to the audiobook, so I haven't seen these illustrations. I actually have a hard copy of your beautiful book. But that section, as you said, Schöningen, in my head I was like the horse butchery site, like, and I'm not a Neanderthal archaeologist, because that section is so gripping, the narrative is so powerful. I was there with, like, I saw the horse eye, like, it's amazing. It's really amazing.
I'm really glad. I mean, if we'd had a bigger budget for the book, I would have I think I probably would have had more like figures, like more stuff about the stone tools and things, because I think that's been a bit difficult. And there was a different illustrator that did that, the ones that we had. But
I'm reminded with my post students, many of whom are on this call, that they, in a meeting with me, go away with a terrible, like, pencil crazy lady sketch. And I'm like, I think you need to make a map, and their faces just fall and they're like, oh no, Robin, please. And then they get like a terrible sketch and then come back with these beautiful things. So yeah, I can really relate to that process. I feel like we could keep talking for a long time, and I have many other questions. And okay, we have a question from Michelle in the chat. So Michelle says, thank you so much for such interesting, honest, and personal presentation of your journeys as authors. I would like to know how you overcame the fear of taking on these projects, how you carved out the time, and how you pushed through with these projects despite the writing process becoming apparent tributaries to the main career channel. Did you push through it on your own, or how important were other people in getting and pushing you through? So this is a lot of questions. There's a lot to unpack there. I'm going to go back to you, Thato, and Michelle, if I can just say to this, one of the first things I asked Thato in our pre-chat, I was just like, why did you do this? When did you do this? And she said, I wrote this book during my PhD. And I was like, why? Why did you write a book during your PhD? And her answer was like, because I had to. So I don't know many other people who've written books during their PhDs because they had to. But Thato, if I hand it over to you, how would you respond to Michelle? I
honestly don't know how he did it. juggling and making sure that our main career paths didn't suffer. Like I said, we did this always after hours, and
a lot of
90%,
Saturday mornings, you
yes,
said.
90% or 98% of the time it was on a Saturday. So we'd interview, obviously for interview purposes, we'd have to interview during the week so that we don't interrupt people's weekends. But when transcribing and writing the stories, those were done over the weekends. How we pushed through, I think Evodia and I carved a great partnership there, because we were each other's accountability partners there. I guess if I wasn't feeling up to it, or if she wasn't feeling up to it, we both knew that come Saturday, we had to have something to work on. So there has to have, we both wrote different versions of the story. So we'd get the transcription once we finish transcribing, and we go away with the transcriptions. She writes a version of the story from what she gets from the transcription. I write another version, and then we sit down together, and then we pull together the two stories to kind of make it even better. So a merge our voices essentially. So that was
a lot of work, though.
Yeah,
because you're doing each story 3 times. Like, it's a lot of work. Crazy.
Yeah, I think each story took about a month from start of from the transcription to when we could say, okay, we are happy with this product. It could be better, but we're happy. We can put it to bed and start on the next one. So honestly, we were each other's accountability partners. And for me, during that process during my thesis writing process, it was also very helpful to have her, because she was very mindful of the fact that this is not my primary goal. This is a side project, and having an academic who's your writing partner in a book is really nice, because if there were things that, or she sensed that there was things that were falling by the wayside in my project, my primary project, then she'd kind of pick me up and keep me going, and making sure that I always remember thesis needs to be done, submitted. The primary goal is that I also become one of these PhD awesome scientists. So it was that worked well. Our partnership worked well to get us through all the humps and bumps along the way.
Oh, excuse me. It's my second shot reaction.
Oh. Shall I answer the same question? Okay, poor Robin. Yeah, I think I had quite a different experience. I didn't write it during my PhD, thank God. I started it after the end of my postdoc. I didn't get another postdoc. I only had one. But I kind of the fear of taking the project, yeah, definitely. I actually had a book contract before this to write a book about humans and birds in prehistory. And we didn't do that one first for various reasons, but they wanted me to do the Neanderthal one first, but I'd originally said no, because it was massively intimidating. And like, oh my God, how can I possibly write a book about everything I know about Neanderthals? And it's too scary. What will my colleagues think about it and everything? So I didn't want to do it first, but it turns out I had to do it first. And once I started it, it just felt right. So that was, it was the writing that helped me overcome the fear. Yeah, carving out the time. Well, I didn't have a job afterwards. I was kind of living on benefits actually in France, and then when I came back to the UK, I was helped by a grant from the Society of Authors, 2 or maybe even 3, I think it was. One of them was a COVID related grant at the end. Yeah, so we were pretty broke, but my husband was a massive support in terms of looking after the children when I was trying to write at weekends, you know, like kind of didn't have weekends for a very long time, which was, you know, not good. I'm very glad that that's not the case anymore, and I'm not going to write like that for my next book. But yeah, so this is the job now. This is the thing. I'm not trying to do academic stuff. I still have an honorary position, but you know, it doesn't have a salary, so I'm still in archaeology, but I'm not trying to pursue that thing because it wasn't actually giving me what I wanted, the structures that I would want, like a very minor part-time, like a 25% part-time research fellowship, so I can do this as well. That doesn't exist. So I've decided to do this, and I have been very lucky because it's been successful. I can actually do this as a career, combine writing and lots of other projects and things. But yeah, in terms of other people who push me through, I absolutely have to give a shout, and I do in the acknowledgements of the book, to my fellow Trailblazers team members. So we also set this up during the postdoc, a group promoting women in archaeology, geology, and paleontology, and 3 other early career researchers, as we were back in 2013 when we started that project. They were just like my 24-hour motivational team for this, and we all are for each other in all the things that's going on in our different careers and stuff, and they absolutely were also key in helping me have the confidence to write, to keep going, to submit my drafts. I'm terrible about submitting drafts to people. I hate it. It's like it's got to be perfect and nobody can see it, which is a very unhelpful thing for a writer. Anyway, that's my answer.
Thank you. I'm back. I'm still alive. I just have a really strong reaction to the COVID vaccine. So my COVID cough is back. I know it sounds like I'm dying, but I'm fine. So I really am fine. So thank you very much, both of you. And I think, yeah, it's almost 2 o'clock. Laura, maybe I can hand over to Laura. Maybe Laura can speak for me.
Sorry, Robin. Guys, thank you so much. This has been such an incredibly dynamic and interesting event, and we're so thrilled and lucky to have you guys speak to us, and this being our last one in the series. Yeah, it couldn't have ended on a better note. I just want to reach out to our listeners and to everyone, and again, thank you. And see, does anyone have any last questions, any last notes you want to share with our speakers? I think we've, oh, okay, one. Hi.
Hi, I'm not sure if there's still time, but I'm so interested in, because you both have an academic background, and Thato, especially you doing this while writing up your PhD. How do you write something so creatively when you're also, when you're trained in such rigid writing, following academic rules? So maybe you can just, very quickly answer, how do you unlearn these things? Or was it easy, maybe?
I think I'll say I didn't unlearn it. I just let that other side come out. It was always there. It wanted to come out.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I think the same thing. And I found that the 2 halves of my training kind of, the 2 halves of my mind work together, in the sense that the creative writing helped the academic writing, and the academic writing helped the creative writing. And it was a weird thing at some point, because both products at the end were much better off because of the other.
Okay, great. Thank you.
That makes me wonder, when right now, especially now, there's so much around scicomm and science communication, and it really, that context always seems to be more with social media or with journalism, maybe. I mean, would you count your work on these books as scicomm?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I will say, being on Twitter since God knows when, I actually think it's helped my writing, because Twitter forces you to distill things. And I had to massively edit this book. It was like twice the length. And I had to really distill every sentence. And I think having practiced on Twitter a lot, that actually was quite helpful. So
yeah, you also have to, like, short format papers for Nature and Science, which in human evolution, or in our research careers, will make or break your career, And I mean, a short format paper, which is 4 pages, it's a question of distilling. Well, right. So yeah, I'm all right, everybody. I think this question of social media and Twitter, particularly during the pandemic, we're a little bit out of time, but I'm so curious to hear both of you. Maybe we can end off with this, just your, I don't know, I mean, you both had to do online launches, you both had to engage a lot, you know, both have big loyal followings on Twitter, you know, which includes me and Laura, like massive fans. Where do you think this is going? If I can ask you to like look into the future a little bit to wrap it up, like as we come out of this weird pandemic world, like where would you see kind of the role of this online communication? The fact that we could even have a Zoom like this. If I can ask you each to have a quick look in your like crystal ball, what do you hope will go forward into 2022?
I think I'll say one thing, which is that the pandemic for me did not really change how I worked, because I already was working from home, and online communication was my main way of communicating with people, like Twitter or my Trailblazers friends via WhatsApp, and you know, so that experience was kind of the same. And the way that I talk on Twitter is, for me, it's like microblogging. Basically, I use it as a way to think about things. I use it as a way to put ideas out there. So some of the ideas and the themes that ended up in the book are things that I already had done threads and things on like several years ago. So I don't think that will change, but for me personally. But in terms of online events, I think we have to continue doing it, because it has made what was inaccessible to many accessible. On the other hand, the ability to do live in-person events has been wonderful, and I massively appreciated that. So I hope we can do both.
Please come and visit us. You know, if I can derail things for a moment, Thato's PhD is in wine. I mean, this is crazy. I know, you need to come and visit us. You also need to come and visit us in Cape Town.
Wine adjacent, not really wine. Oh.
I'm literally a wine scientist. But Thato, what do you think? Like because you've also had to pivot into this online world.
Yeah. And I think for me, it was a big pivot, because I hadn't been a big social media user, and the online space was something we generally used if you were interacting with a collaborator overseas. So there was a very narrow scope for it. But having had to launch a book through this space, and having sat through many book launches and really interacted in many things that I would have otherwise not had the opportunity to do, because it is either somewhere in Europe, America, or wherever else in the world, it's something that I think should carry on, even though things are going or should go back to some sense of normalcy. We need to always keep these channels and use them to the fullest of their ability, so that we become more connected in everything that we do, and you reach a broader audience. So it's I think that's what Twitter has given many people, and all the other social media platforms. But this type of work also, or these type of platforms where you can interact with people from far afield, it's awesome. And I think it needs to be.
Yeah, and recorded, right? Like we've recorded today. So we actually have an amazing record of the hour we've spent together today.
And I think considering that COP is going on at the moment as well, this is one of the big things, like, you know, being able to do online stuff, it does remove some of the need to do to fly sometimes. And, you know, I'm kind of struggling. I've been to Italy and Spain the past month for book tour stuff. I had to fly because I couldn't, the trains just were impossible. It was taking like 3 days to get from my house to Spain. I just couldn't do it. I've got an invitation to go to India. I would love to go to India. I can't get to India by train. But you know, you have to kind of make choices. But the ability to do this, and this having become normalized, I think actually does mean that we can be a little bit more choosy about where we put our carbon allowances, which is a good thing.
Christa, so Christa Culligan is incredible woman in science author who wrote Darwin's Hunch. So Krista, please.
Oh, I thought you were just about to close. I've enjoyed the conversation, and really interesting hearing about how you both made things working with social media. I've been so hesitant. I'm working on new material, and I'm excited about it, but I'm not sharing it on Twitter. And so it was really interesting, Becky, to hear about, your process being so different, and Thato, the book itself, pulling you into that, space. So I really appreciate, HERI, that you brought, and Robin and Laura, that you brought us all together. And so thank you for the session.
Oh, it's such a pleasure, Krista. It's really such a pleasure. Thank you for joining us. I think, Laura, it might be nice to do like a HERI post about this, right? Like just a little bit of a write-up to go with it. Because this was wonderful. I think, unfortunately, I mean, I actually still have many questions. I wanted to ask you both, we ran out of time for this, but I wanted to ask you, because I think there's very interesting stories. Thato is self-published, but I know, Becky, you have a very interesting story which ended with you publishing with Bloomsbury.
It starts on Twitter. Yeah, my publisher found me on Twitter in, 2012. Because it's Bloomsbury, but it's like it's their popular science imprint. And so, my editor, Jim Martin, knew, I think, that lots of scientists who are into communicating what they do are on Twitter. So, he sort of scouted around and approached me directly. So I didn't have an agent. And so that was how that contract began. But yes, since this book came out and was very successful, I was able to, basically choose a literary agent, and I have an incredible legendary literary agent now, and I feel really lucky to be working with him. And yeah, I'm writing my proposal for book 2. But yeah, that's something that I'm sort of not so much sharing on Twitter, because you've got the old fear of being scooped again, that horrible academic feeling constantly. And I didn't have that with Kindred, because I knew I was writing it. I didn't expect it to be anything. I was just like, well, I'm putting my ideas, I'm just gonna tell everyone my ideas because I love Neanderthals, and if a new paper comes out, I talk about it. It's cool. And that went into that book. But with this second book, I feel like the structure has changed a little bit, because I have to write a formal proposal now. And yeah, so that's a little bit more like
classic on the season 2 pressure, right? It's the classic.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I feel like we could all just keep going. But yeah, children need to be fetched from school quite soon. So yeah, Thato, you can own, I think you need it. It's fine. You can own. She says she's by far not a wine scientist. No,
seriously, my day-to-day work does not involve a drop of wine, to be honest, and that's why I say that I can't own it. The working on the microorganisms isolated in the grape, but in the vineyards, that's where I can own, but not making the wine.
But it's a lot closer to wine than what any of us do. So.
I'm a coffee scientist. I couldn't write this book without my coffee. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh my word! But I've loved. I mean, I'm learning about archaeology. For me, you guys are in the same environment. For most of you guys are in the same environment. But it was like an adventure. It was awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you for having us. It's been wonderful.
It's your thank you present. We will gift you each other's book. How about that? I think that's
that would be amazing.
We'll make that happen. So thank you so much, both of you. You are busy ladies with, serious day jobs going on at this stage. So thank you so much for giving us not just this hour of your time, because you both had prepared the slides, corresponded with us for months, actually. We've low grade stalked Becky for months to make this happen. Thato as well. So, and we didn't actually have a long existing relationship with either of these amazing women. So Laura and I exploded out of nowhere into their inboxes and said like, hey, do a webinar for us. So thank you both. And
it's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Huge thanks to Laura for making this happen. It was literally a crazy idea in February and has manifested itself into this wonderful event in November. And thank you to our audience for showing up. I'm sorry again about my magnificent coughing fit. I can see my mom is on this call, and my mom would, you don't need to do it, Mom, but my mom would explain that it's actually a genetic thing. The women in our family have these incredible coughing fits, particularly post-COVID. So yeah, thank you again, everybody. I feel a bit sad closing the event, and this is the last of our winter series webinars. But I think Laura will do it again next year. And while it'll be lovely to have in-person things again next year, I think the power of having these online has been really remarkable with getting speakers, audience members. I think we'll be back next year. So thank you, everybody. Keep well, look after yourselves out there, take care. And we'll see you in this space next year. So thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you for having us. Thank you, everyone. Bye.